My name is Myra Endicott, and I turned 36 this past February. I was standing outside the Mountain Laurel Hotel in Pittsburgh on a Saturday in April, and the security guard was reading me a sentence my younger sister had handwritten on his notepad. My mother stood 5 steps to his right, looking down at her phone. My stepfather had turned his back to count cars in the valet line. The security guard pointed me toward a service door at the southeast corner of the building, near the kitchen vents. 3 hours later, while I was cutting grapes in halves for my 3-year-old daughter, my mother called me screaming that the hotel had voided the entire event and that the National Association of Insurance Commissioners had just contacted her, the part my sister had not planned for, in any single moment of any of it. I am about to walk you through. Welcome back to the channel. We tell long-form stories about quiet women who let credentials, contracts, and small phone calls do the work their families refuse to do. If you have ever been the stepchild treated like a guest in your own family, or the licensed professional who watched a relative borrow your name like a casserole dish, pull up a chair, drop a comment letting me know where you are listening from. Subscribe before we start. There is a piece of family history I have to lay out before I get to Saturday. My biological father, Daniel Endicott, died of leukemia 4 months after I was born. My mother, Rosalind, was 26. I do not remember any of it. What I remember is the absence. The careful, quiet absence that lived in every photograph that did not exist of her holding me as a baby. She remarried 4 years later, a man named Glenn Endicott, who turned out to be a distant cousin of Daniel by way of a great-uncle in Erie. Same last name, different family. I have spent my whole life signing the name Endicott without anyone in either family quite agreeing on what the name belonged to. The person who actually raised me, in the way grandparents sometimes raise a child the parents cannot quite touch, was my paternal grandfather Patrick. He drove down from Erie every summer until I went to college. He attended my graduations. He flew to Pittsburgh in 2018 for my professional swearing-in ceremony, and he pressed a small brass-rimmed glass paperweight into my hand. A 4-leaf clover had been pressed flat inside the glass. He said, "This was your father's. He would have wanted you to keep it on your desk." Patrick died 4 months after that ceremony. My mother held his things for safekeeping until I drove down to her house and asked for the paperweight. She handed it back without looking at me. That was the last time I went into her house as a daughter. After that, I went as a guest. My half-sister Heather was born in 1999, when I was 9. I remember the year because I overheard a conversation in the hallway of my grandmother's house. I was sitting cross-legged on the carpet around the corner from the kitchen. My mother was talking to her sister, my Aunt Marjorie. My mother said, "Heather is going to be the one I get right." I was 9. I did not know what the sentence meant. By the time I was 16, I knew exactly what it meant. By the time I was 26, I had stopped feeling anything when I thought about it. By 36, it had become weather, a fact about the climate I lived in, but no longer the thing that wore me down. I packed my own lunches starting in 5th grade. I graduated high school with a 4.0 grade point average. My mother missed the awards ceremony. She was at the same school the same day, accepting an Outstanding Citizenship Medal on Heather's behalf. Heather was in 7th grade. The two events were separated by a hallway and 45 minutes. Aunt Marjorie still forwards Facebook memories of Heather into the family group text. First day of kindergarten in 2004. Roller skating birthday in 2008. Junior prom in 2017. She has never once forwarded a photo of me. I have noticed. I have never said anything. I thought I had learned how not to feel it. The Saturday in April taught me I had only learned how not to show it. My office is on the 12th floor of the Terrastone building on Grant Street in downtown Pittsburgh. I started at Terrastone Risk Group when I was 22, the year I graduated from Penn State with a degree in economics, at the front desk reception position. I learned what an underwriter actually does by listening to phone calls while filing certificates of insurance. I went to night school for my MBA at Carnegie Mellon Tepper from 2016 to 2018. I made underwriter at 30, senior underwriter at 33. I earned my Chartered Property Casualty Underwriter designation in 2018, with my license number registered to the Pennsylvania State Board as PA-C PCU-188642. The framed certificate hangs on the wall behind my desk. My grandfather's paperweight sits on the corner of the desk, between the phone and the in-tray. Most of my colleagues think the four-leaf clover is a charm. It is not a charm. It is a witness. In the fourth quarter of 2024, my vice president of underwriting, a woman named Avery Lambert who has mentored me for 10 years, appointed me regional lead for broker fraud review in the Northeast. The role is administrative on paper and serious in practice. When the carrier flags a broker delegation form for low signature match confidence, the file lands in my queue. I review, decide, escalate to compliance, or close. 2 weeks before that Saturday in April, a file landed in my queue. Case number TS-NE-2024-1144. I did not open it. I was in the middle of Q1 renewals. The system pinged me twice. I marked both pings for later. The name on the file was a name I would have recognized if I had looked. I did not look. The invitation arrived in our mailbox on a Tuesday in early February. The envelope was thick cardstock, coral pink, addressed to me in my sister's handwriting. Slanted, all caps, the way she had written since she was 12. Inside, a printed card in gold ink. Mr. and Mrs. Glenn Endicott invite you to celebrate the engagement of Heather Lynn Endicott to Jasper Halloway Whitfield, Mountain Laurel Hotel, Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh. Saturday, April 12th, 3 p.m. In the corner of the response card, in the same all-caps handwriting, my sister had written, plus 0 guests. Ben was loading the dishwasher when I came in from the foyer. I handed him the card. He read it twice. He said, "Did she really write +0?" I said, "She did." He said, "You do not have to go." I said, 90 minutes. Then I am home. That is the deal. Ben is a family law mediation attorney. He sits across tables from people doing terrible things to each other for a living. He knows when an offer is generous and when it is not. He looked at the card. He looked at me. He said, "All right, 90 minutes. I will have tea waiting." Cora was 3 years old. She did not know what an engagement party was. She knew that her Aunt Heather lived 90 minutes from us, and that her grandmother Rosalind sometimes called and sometimes did not. I did not tear the card up. I put it on the console table in the foyer, next to the bowl where we keep keys. That was the first mistake I made that week. I should have torn it. My mother called me on the Wednesday before the engagement party. It was a Wednesday afternoon kind of call, the kind my mother makes when she is about to ask me to do something she expects me to refuse, and is preemptively wounded that I have not agreed yet. She said, "Honey, listen. Heather has been telling the Whitfields you have been having a hard time. So if Tessa Whitfield asks you anything on Saturday, just be vague." I said, "Mom, what hard time?" She said, "You know, with Cora, with being out of the house, the social anxiety thing." I said, "I do not have social anxiety. I never have." She said, "Well, just play along, all right? Heather is anxious. The Whitfields are old Carolina money type. They like things presented a certain way." I said, "She told them I am agoraphobic." She said, "She told them you are private, like Daniel was. They do not need the details. Just stay near the bar and do not make Heather feel observed." I said, "All right, Mom." I told Ben at dinner while Cora made patterns with green beans on her tray. I said, "My mother just asked me to pretend to be agoraphobic at a public event." Ben put his fork down. He said, "Counteroffer. Don't." I laughed. He smiled. Cora ate a green bean. I had counted 3 red flags by the end of that phone call. Agoraphobia, old Carolina money type, and do not make Heather feel observed. I should have counted 5. The 2 I missed. The Whitfields already knew what I did for a living, and Heather had a copy of my license number on her phone. Saturday morning, I put on a navy dress. Not the navy dress I wear to client dinners. The slightly older one, with the modest sleeves, that I keep for events where I do not want to be remembered. I added the wedding ring I had inherited from my paternal grandmother, the small one with the chip-cut sapphire, and the pearl earrings Ben had given me on our second anniversary. Cora was at the kitchen table, eating dry cereal one piece at a time. She looked up. She said, "Mommy, go to party." I said, "Mommy is going to Aunt Heather's party for a little bit." She said, "Mommy, come back." I said, "Always." Ben was at the garage door with my keys and a thermos of coffee. He kissed me on the temple. He said, "Drive safe. Call if you want." I said, 90 minutes. Then I am home. I picked up my keys from the bowl in the foyer. The coral RSVP card was still on the console table, where I had left it in February. I looked at +0 guests in my sister's handwriting one last time. I put the keys in my purse. I did not touch the card. I backed the Subaru Outback out of the driveway at 1:47 p.m. I took McNeely Road south through Mount Lebanon, through the Liberty Tunnel, up the other side into Squirrel Hill. The Mountain Laurel Hotel came up on my left at 2:43 p.m. The valet stand was busy. I pulled into the public lot. I locked the car. I walked toward the front entrance. I did not know I would not be using it. The Mountain Laurel front entrance has 2 glass doors framed in dark walnut and a small awning over the threshold. There are 2 security guards standing under the awning when I approach. One tall, one shorter, both in matching gray blazers with earpieces. The shorter one stepped forward. His name tag read, Trevor. He looked about 45. He had a clipboard and the careful, slightly pained expression of a man who has been told to do something he did not want to do. He said, "Ma'am, your name, please." I said, "Myra Endicott." He looked at the clipboard. He flipped a page. He looked again. He looked at me. He did not meet my eye for longer than a second. He said, "Ma'am, I am very sorry." The bride left a handwritten note for our team. I have been asked to read it as it was written. I said, "All right." He read aloud in the careful voice of a man who hated the sentence he was reading. "She will not come in. Have her wait in her car if she insists." Behind the glass of the front doors I could see my mother. She had been standing by the lobby fireplace. When Trevor began reading, she turned her head. She saw me. She looked back down at her phone. My stepfather Glenn was at the far end of the lobby, near the valet stand, with his back to me, counting cars. I counted the doors. Front entrance. Valet stand. Service door at the northwest corner by the linen pantry. Service door at the southeast corner, near the kitchen vents. Loading dock at the far end. 5 doors. 2 guards. One bride who had written my name on a piece of paper without writing what I had ever done to deserve it. I let 4 seconds pass. I am told this is what an underwriter does when she is recalculating risk. I said, "Trevor, thank you. Could you direct me to the service entrance?" Trevor said, "Ma'am, the southeast door is closest. I am so sorry." I said, "You are doing your job. You did it well." I lifted my phone. I took one photograph of the clipboard, with the handwritten note clearly visible. Trevor saw me do it. He did not stop me. He looked down at his shoes. I walked around the side of the building. I did not look back at the glass doors. I did not check whether my mother had looked up. I learned 3 days later, from a screenshot Cole sent me, that my Aunt Marjorie had taken a photograph of me walking toward the service entrance. She had posted it in the family Facebook group with the caption, "Phew, dramatic moment averted." The post got 11 likes before Cole reported it down. The service door at the southeast corner of the Mountain Laurel opens onto a short concrete ramp that leads into a corridor lined with rolling carts of folded linen and crates of glassware. I am not an insider at this hotel. I have never worked here. I do not know the staff. The bartender who passed me in the corridor, young, 25 maybe, with a name tag I did not catch, glanced at my dress and did not nod. He did not know who I was. He had no reason to. I am, however, a senior underwriter at the company that insures the Mountain Laurel's event liability lines. I know what the back hallway of a hotel in this category looks like. I have walked 200 of them. I know which corridor leads to the ballroom and which to the loading dock. I know which door is fire-rated and which is not. I walked through the linen pantry. I passed the kitchen. I came out into the main service hallway behind the front desk. The front desk faces the lobby. I walked around the back of it. The desk clerk had stepped away to take a phone call. On the corner of the back counter, sitting open, was a thick black binder. The spine label read, Certificate of Insurance. Event April 12th. Endicott/Whitfield. I did not stop. I did not open the binder. Not yet. I noted it. I kept walking. I had a plan. 90 minutes. Stand near the bar. Smile at Tessa Whitfield if she introduced herself. Compliment the cake. Leave. I had not planned to open any binders on a Saturday afternoon. I came through the back hallway into the main ballroom at 3:02 p.m. The ballroom held about 210 people. The string quartet was playing Vivaldi. The crystal chandeliers had been dimmed to soft amber. The room smelled of lilies and Prosecco, and the warm yeast of bread baskets just placed on tables. Heather was at the far end, near the dais, in a borrowed ivory dress. She was laughing with a cluster of 4 women I did not know. Jasper Whitfield stood 3 feet away, half-turned, speaking quietly with 2 of his cousins. Tessa Whitfield, his mother, stood by the windows with a glass of Prosecco and the posture of a woman who has chaired 3 charity boards. My mother spotted me from the gift table. Her eyes went wide for half a second. She looked back down at the table. She did not move toward me. My stepfather Glenn was at the bar. He had a tumbler in his hand and was watching the ice melt. My stepbrother Cole was in the far corner in a navy blazer, holding a coffee cup and standing alone. I had not seen Cole at a family event in 5 years. He was 30. He had Glenn's height and his late mother Tabitha's careful eyes. He nodded at me across the room. I nodded back. A middle-aged man I did not recognize, in a Whitfield-side suit, stepped toward me with a polite smile. He said, "You must be Heather's older sister. She mentioned you might not be able to make it today." I said, "I am here." He said, "She said you have been taking some time off. Is that right?" I said, "From what, exactly?" His smile faltered. He recovered. He moved on. That was the moment I understood Heather had built her entire engagement around the version of me that did not exist. Tessa Whitfield is the kind of woman who measures other women in the first 3 seconds. She crossed the ballroom toward me without any particular hurry, Prosecco still in her hand, and stopped 2 feet away. She held out her right hand. She said, "Tessa Whitfield, Jasper's mother. Heather has told me so much about you." I shook her hand. I said, "Myra Endicott, it is nice to meet you." Tessa's eyes did a brief professional scan. Navy dress, sapphire ring, pearl earrings, sensible Cole Haan flats. I have done the same scan on hundreds of insureds. I knew what she was looking at. She said, "Heather mentioned you worked in healthcare. Or was it therapy? I cannot remember exactly." I said, "Insurance, event liability, among other lines." Tessa set her Prosecco down on a side table. She said, "Oh, how interesting. Which firm?" I said, "Terrastone Risk Group, senior underwriter." Tessa tilted her head a quarter inch. She said, "Terrastone covers some of our commercial lines at Whitfield Land." I said, "Yes, ma'am. Avery Lambert handles your portfolio." Tessa smiled with the lower half of her face only. She said, "I had not realized. Heather described you as primarily at home. With your daughter." I said, "I have a daughter. I also have a corner office on the 12th floor of the Grant Building." Tessa nodded slowly. She said, "I see." She excused herself politely and walked across the ballroom toward Heather. I watched. Heather glanced up from her cluster of friends. Heather's face went white. Tessa said something quietly into Heather's ear. Then she walked past her toward the windows again. I went looking for the restroom. Heather caught me by the elbow in the alcove near the hydrangea arrangement, just before the restroom hallway. She was holding her champagne flute with both hands. Her knuckles were white around the stem. She said, low and fast, "What are you doing? Why are you talking to Tessa? I told you to stay near the bar." I said. She walked over to me. Heather said, "Why did you bring up Terrastone?" She thinks you stay home with Cora. I said. Heather. She asked what I do. I told her. Heather said, she did not need to know. She thought you were home with your kid. Why couldn't you be quiet for one day? I said. Heather. Why does Tessa Whitfield think I am a stay-at-home mother struggling with anxiety? Heather said. Because that is the version she likes. Don't ruin it. Please. She said please the way she had said it when we were children and she wanted to borrow my homework, the exact same intonation. I have heard her say, please like that approximately 300 times across our adult lives. It has never meant please. It has always meant, do not make me face what I have done. I said, I am going to the restroom. Heather said, when you come back, stay near the bar. Don't talk to anyone. I said, all right. I walked past the hydrangeas into the carpeted hallway. The hallway curved past 3 private dining rooms toward the restrooms. I passed the front desk again on the way. The black binder was still on the back counter. The clerk was still on the phone. It was 3:08 p.m. I had 82 minutes left on my 90-minute plan. I was about to revise it. Pause with me for a second. If you have ever stood in a room full of people who think they know you because someone in your family has been telling them lies for 14 months, drop a period in the comments below. You are not alone. And if you are wondering where this is going, the next 30 seconds are the part where I walked past the front desk a second time, and this time, I opened the binder. Stay with me. 3:09 p.m. The front desk clerk had not yet returned from her phone call. The lobby was quiet. The string quartet was playing Pachelbel 2 rooms over. I stopped at the back of the desk. I opened the black binder. Page 1 was the certificate of insurance. Certificate holder. Mountain Laurel Hotel. Insured event. Endicott/Whitfield engagement reception. Date. April 12, 2026. Coverage. General liability. $2 million. Carrier. Terrastone Risk Group. Broker of record. Myra Endicott, CPCU. License number, PA-CPCU-1-88642. Signature, signed. I read the license number twice. I read it a third time. I could see the framed certificate on my office wall in my head. The number on it. The number on this binder. Same number. I had not signed any broker delegation form for any event in April. I had not signed a broker delegation form for my sister, ever, in 8 years of being credentialed. I turned the page. Page 3 was the broker delegation form, the signature page. The signature on the form was a careful, slightly wobbly version of my own. 80% right, 20% wrong. The kind of signature you would copy if you had a photograph of an original to trace from. I have an Instagram post from October 2018, from the night of my swearing-in ceremony, with my grandfather Patrick standing beside me and the certificate in my hand. The signature on the certificate is visible in the photograph if you zoom in. I closed the binder. I could feel the paperweight on my desk in my head. The brass rim. The clover under the glass. Patrick driving down from Erie. The way he had said this was your father's. I walked into the women's restroom. I closed the door of the handicapped stall. I sat down on the closed toilet lid. I took my phone out of my purse. I scrolled to Hugo Bellamy, Terrastone Compliance. I pressed call. Hugo answered on the second ring. Hugo said, Myra, you are calling on a Saturday from a bathroom. I can hear the tile. I said, Hugo, listen. I am at the Mountain Laurel Hotel in Squirrel Hill. There is a certificate of insurance for an event today. File reference TS-NE-2024-1144. Broker of record listed as me. I never signed it. There was a pause of about 3 seconds. The kind of pause Hugo does when he is shifting from Saturday Hugo to Compliance Officer Hugo. Hugo said, stand by. Pulling the file. I waited. I heard typing. I heard him mute himself to take a sip of something. I heard him unmute. Hugo said, all right. I have it. Broker delegation form signed February 14th. Signature match score, 84%. Auto flagged for low confidence. The system tried to send you a review notification on March 28th. It bounced because you did not open it within 48 hours. There is a second flag from March 31st. You did not open that either. Q1 renewals. I said, yes. Hugo said, Myra, this is a felony. Pennsylvania Title 18, Section 4101. I have to escalate within 4 hours by carrier protocol. Are you the affected broker, and are you willing to file? I said, I am. File it. My family forged it. I will give you a written statement on Monday morning. For right now, void the policy retroactive to the issue date. The Mountain Laurel Master Contract requires valid event coverage for any event over 150 guests. They will have to cancel. Hugo typed. Hugo said, done. Void confirmed. Notification going out now. Coleman Pritchard, Mountain Laurel General Manager, will see this in his inbox at 4:15. I said, thank you. I looked at my watch. It was 3:23 p.m. I came out of the restroom at 3:31 p.m. I went back to the ballroom by the same hallway I had come in by. The string quartet had moved on to something slow by Brahms. The lights were warmer. The conversation in the room had thickened by one drink. Heather was on the dais now, next to Jasper. The catering manager had handed her a fresh champagne flute. She tapped the side of it 3 times with a butter knife. The room quieted. Heather said, I just want to say a few words. She said, I am so grateful to everyone who showed up today, especially the people who came in spite of their struggles. You know who you are. Jasper smiled politely beside her. He did not laugh. Tessa Whitfield, by the windows, did not smile. Heather said, some of us grew up in households where one person took all the air out of every room. We had to learn how to be small. We learned how to be the real family, the kind that does not need to make every event about themselves. A scattered laugh. My mother clapped softly. My stepfather examined his glass. Heather raised her flute toward Jasper. She said, to choosing your family. To finally being seen. The room toasted. Glasses lifted. Tessa Whitfield did not lift her glass. She was looking at her phone. I watched her thumb move. She was typing a message. I could not see the screen. I learned later, in a deposition, that Tessa was texting her older son Wesley to pull Terrastone's confirmed broker of record list for the event. Wesley pulled it. He cross-referenced. He called Avery Lambert at 3:41. I did not know any of that yet. I left the ballroom. I needed to find Cole. My mother caught me in the carpeted hallway between the ballroom and the service corridor. She had taken off her left shoe to adjust the heel. She put it back on, smoothed her dress, and stepped into my path. Her face was the face she uses when she is trying to be reasonable about something she knows she cannot reason her way out of. She said, Myra, please, stay 1 more hour. Don't make this complicated. I said, Mom, did you know Heather wrote a note for the security guard? She blinked. She said, what note? I said, she will not come in. Have her wait in her car if she insists. H.E. That note. She said, honey, she has been so anxious about today. She said, you always made events about you. Just this once, let your sister have the spotlight. I let 4 seconds pass. I said, Mom, I have not said 1 word at this event, not one. I shook 1 hand. I drank 1 glass of water. I said insurance when I was asked. She said, it is not about what you say. It is about your presence. You are so much. You always have been. I said, Mom, you knew about the note. She did not answer. I said, you let her write it. You let the guard read it to me. She said, I did not let. I did not stop. There is a difference. I said, not today, there is not. I stepped around her. She did not follow. I walked through the service door into the back corridor. Cole was standing by the linen carts. He had his coffee cup in one hand and his phone face down on top of a stack of folded napkins. He looked up. He saw me. He set the cup down. Cole and I had not had a real conversation in 5 years, not since our grandfather Patrick's funeral, when we had stood by the casket for 10 minutes saying nothing, because there was nothing to say across the gap our parents had built between us. He said, Myra. I said, Cole. He took a half step closer. He kept his voice low. He said, Heather wrote that note on Trevor's pad. I watched her do it. I was at the bar. I saw it from 12 feet away. Mom watched. Glenn was on his phone. I said, All right. Cole said, Careful. Exact. She will not come in. Have her wait in her car if she insists. That is what she wrote. I am quoting because I want you to know I am quoting. I said, Thank you. He said, I should have called you 15 years ago. The whole thing about being the silent stepson who would not pick a side. I should have picked one. I picked the side that did not require me to do anything. That is also a side. I said, I know. He said, Whatever you are going to do tonight, I am not going to defend them. I will tell whoever asks me whatever they ask. The note. Tessa Whitfield's question. Glenn's expression. Mom's silence. Whatever you need me to say. I said, All right, Cole. Thank you. He nodded. He did not move closer. He did not try to hug me. He picked up his coffee cup. My phone rang. I did not have to look to know it was Hugo. I said, I have to take this. Cole said, Take it. I will be by the bar. Find me when you are done. I stepped back into the linen pantry. I answered. Hugo said, Update. I said, Go. Hugo said, Policy voided retroactive to the April 12th issue date. Confirmation logged at 3:58 p.m. Coleman Pritchard at Mountain Laurel has received the void notice. He is on a call with his legal team now. The master contract for the event requires valid liability coverage for any event over 150 guests. Their legal will be contacting the booking holder, Glenn Endicott, primary contact, within the next 30 minutes. I said, All right. Hugo said, Also, Pennsylvania Insurance Department contact opened at 3:46, case number 2026-PA-INV-447. They will begin their own investigation Monday morning. NAIC notice is in queue. It will hit the public bulletin Tuesday. I said, All right. Hugo said, One more thing. Wesley Whitfield called Avery Lambert directly. He identified himself as outside counsel for Whitfield Land Company. He asked whether the void was based on documentary fraud. Avery confirmed yes. He thanked her and hung up. I said, How did Wesley get from a toast in a ballroom to a phone call to my VP in 11 minutes? Hugo said, I do not know. But he did. I said, Hugo, thank you. I will see you Monday morning at 8. Hugo said, Stay still. You did this clean. Do not negotiate with anyone in your family between now and Monday morning. Let it ride. I said, I will. I hung up. I stood in the linen pantry for 30 seconds. I could hear the string quartet through the wall. The Brahms had finished. They were playing something brighter now. I walked back through the corridor, out the service door, around the building, and got into my Subaru. I started the car at 4:01 p.m. I pulled out of the public lot, took Forbes Avenue West, and merged onto the parkway. I called Ben on hands-free. He answered on the first ring. He said, How did it go? I said, Heather forged my CPCU license number on a broker delegation form. The signature on the form is a traced copy of mine. I called Hugo from the bathroom. The policy is voided. The hotel is going to cancel the event within the hour. There was a pause. Ben does not panic. He recalibrates. He said, Are you safe to drive? I said, I am fine. I am on the parkway. 20 minutes. He said, All right. Cora is down for her nap. I will have tea ready. Black or chamomile? I said, Chamomile. He said, Come home. I hung up. I drove through the Liberty Tunnel. I came out the other side into Mount Lebanon. I passed the McNeely Library. I counted 12 mailboxes from the library to our turn. I did not cry. I did not think about my mother. I thought about the paperweight on my desk on the 12th floor of the Grant Building, the brass rim, the 4-leaf clover under the glass. The hour my grandfather had stood in the Penn State Auditorium in 2018, listening to them call out the license number that was now sitting on a certificate of insurance for an event my sister had decided I was not allowed to attend. I pulled into the driveway at 4:21 p.m. Ben was on the porch. He had a mug in each hand. Cora's baby monitor was on the railing beside him. He kissed me on the temple. He handed me the chamomile. He said, "Tell me everything when you are ready." I want to pause again. If you are a credentialed professional, CPA, attorney, nurse, broker, and somebody in your family has ever treated your license number like community property, type license in the comments below. I read every one of them. Your name on a regulatory document is not a casserole dish that gets passed around. It is a contract with the state. Now, 4:26 p.m. Avery Lambert called me. Avery Lambert has been my mentor at Terrastone for 10 years. She does not call on Saturdays unless something is on fire. I picked up at the kitchen counter with the chamomile still steaming. Avery said, "Myra, I just got off the phone with Hugo. The policy void is confirmed. NAIC notice is filed and queued for Tuesday. Coleman Pritchard at Mountain Laurel has triggered the breach of contract suspension on the event. His legal is calling Glenn Endicott in the next 20 minutes. I said, "All right. Thank you for calling." Avery said, "I have been doing this 30 years. I have never seen a broker fraud case this clean. The paper trail was complete before you even opened your front door this morning. You are not the problem. You are the broker who caught it." I said, "Thank you, Avery." Avery said, "One more thing. Wesley Whitfield called me directly at 3:41. He is an old colleague. He asked whether the void was based on misrepresentation. I confirmed yes, on documentary fraud grounds. He thanked me. He said he would relay it to his mother. I said, "Tessa." Avery said, "Tessa." He said she would want to be informed personally before she made any decisions about her son's situation. I said, "She is moving fast." Avery said, "She has spent her life moving fast. That is how she still runs Whitfield Land at 58. Listen, do not speak to anyone in your family between now and Monday morning. I mean it. If your mother calls, do not pick up. If she texts, do not respond. Let the process work." I said, "I will try." Avery said, "Try harder than that. Promise me." I said, "I promise." Avery hung up. My phone rang again 12 seconds later. It was my mother. I picked up. My mother was screaming. Not yelling. Screaming. She said, "Myra, what did you do? Coleman Pritchard just called. They are canceling. They said fraud. They said NAIC. What did you do?" Ben put the chamomile down. He sat across from me at the counter. He did not speak. He just waited. I said, "Mom." She said, "Why did you call them?" I said, "Mom, I did not cancel anything. The carrier voided the policy because the broker delegation form for the event has a forged CPCU license number on it, my license number. I have a professional duty to report." I did. She said, "It was just a signature, to get the discount. Why does this matter?" I said, "Mom, it is a felony. Pennsylvania Title 18, Section 4101, forgery of professional credentials. That is not a discount issue. That is prosecution." She said, "She did not know. She did not know what she was doing." I said, "She copied my license number off a Facebook photo from 2018. She traced my signature off the same photo. That is not someone who did not know." She said, "You have to call them back. You have to fix this." I said, "Mom, I cannot fix a documented fraud. If I called Hugo right now and asked him to walk the report back, that would be obstruction. That is another felony. I would lose my own license. I would lose my own career." She said, "She is your sister." I said, "Half-sister." The line was silent for 3 seconds. She said, "You have always been so cold." She hung up. I looked at Ben. Ben looked at the chamomile. Cora's baby monitor crackled once, then quieted. It was 4:31 p.m. I picked up the chamomile and drank half of it. It had gone slightly tepid. Ben got up and warmed it with a splash from the kettle. He said, "She did not say sorry." I said, "She will not. Not today." I walked into the foyer to put my purse down on the console table. The coral RSVP card was where I had left it in February. Plus, 0 guests in Heather's slanted, all-caps handwriting. I picked the card up. I looked at it. In February, I had read +0 guests and thought she is in a phase. She is anxious about the Whitfields. She does not know how to invite people. In April, I read +0 guests and understood. She had not forgotten Ben. She had not forgotten Cora. She had made a decision. She had written it down. She had sent it through the United States Postal Service. She had stamped it. I put the card down on the console table again, next to the bowl with the keys. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. Not my mother. Whitfield. Tessa. I looked at Ben. He nodded. I picked up. She said, "Mrs. Endicott, I apologize for calling unannounced. I would like to come by your home this evening with my son. There are several things he needs to hear directly from you. May I have your address?" I said, "Yes, ma'am. We are in Mount Lebanon." I gave her the address. She read it back. She said, "We will be there at 6. We will not stay long." I said, "All right." She said, "Thank you for your time." She hung up. It was 4:51 p.m. My mother called again. This time she was not screaming. My mother was crying. Quietly. The way she cries when she wants to be heard crying but does not want to be heard losing control. She said, "Myra, please. Heather is 27. She is the baby. She does not know better. You are 36. You know how to fix things." I said, "Mom." She said, "Call Hugo. Tell him it was a misunderstanding. Tell him you signed it after the fact and forgot." I said, "Mom, I cannot do that. That would be obstruction of a federal investigation. NAIC is a federal regulatory body. That is a second felony on top of the first. I would lose my license. I would lose my career. I would lose the professional designation I spent 4 years earning." She said, "She is your sister." I said, "Half-sister. And she committed fraud using my credentials." She said, "You always make everything about protocol." I said, "Yes, because protocol is what stops things like this from becoming worse than they already are." She said, "She is your sister." I said, "Mom." She wrote on a security guard's notepad that I should wait in my car. She told the Whitfields I had agoraphobia and could not be trusted with my own daughter. She forged my CPCU license number to get a friends and family discount on her event insurance. There are 3 different facts I just listed. None of them stop being true because we are related. She said, "Why are you so like Daniel? He was always so exact." The line went quiet for 4 seconds. I said, "Mom, I am going to hang up. Tessa Whitfield is coming over with Jasper at 6. She said, "Tessa is coming to your house." I said, "Yes." I am going to hang up now. Take care. I hung up. Ben looked at me. He said, "She compared you to your father." I said, "For once she was being accurate." He smiled, just slightly. It was 5:14 p.m. They came earlier than I expected. The doorbell rang at 5:42. I looked through the peephole. My mother, Glenn, Heather, Cole, all 4 of them on my porch. Heather's mascara had run. Glenn was holding a hat I had never seen him wear. Cole stood 2 feet behind the other 3, hands in his pockets, not part of the cluster. I opened the door. My mother said, "Myra, please, we have to talk." Coleman called Glenn directly at 4:40. They said they are not just canceling. They are suing for breach. They are seeking the deposit and damages. Heather is being investigated. We need you to call Hugo and walk this back. We came as a family. We are asking as a family. I said, "Come in. But Tessa Whitfield is coming at 6. 12 minutes. My mother stepped in. Glenn followed. Heather sat down in the armchair near the fireplace and put her face in her hands. Cole came in last. He nodded at Ben in the kitchen doorway. He stood by the kitchen, not in the living room. Glenn looked around the room. His eyes stopped at the coffee table. On the coffee table, Ben had set the brass-rimmed paperweight from my office desk. The four-leaf clover under the glass caught the light from the floor lamp. The paperweight had been on my office desk 40 minutes earlier. Ben had driven downtown after my second call with Avery to retrieve it. Glenn looked at the paperweight for 3 seconds. He looked up at me. His eyes did not have anything in them I had seen before. They had something quieter and worse. He looked away. I said, "Mom, please sit on the couch." "Glenn? Anywhere." "Cole, you can stay where you are if you prefer." The doorbell rang again at 5:51. Tessa Whitfield wore a plain black dress and no jewelry. Jasper Whitfield stood behind her in the same charcoal suit he had worn at the engagement party. He was not holding flowers. He was not holding anything. I let them in. Tessa stepped into the foyer. She looked past me into the living room. She saw my mother on the couch. She saw Glenn standing by the fireplace. She saw Heather in the armchair with her face in her hands. She nodded once, coldly. Tessa said, "Mrs. Endicott, thank you for receiving us." She walked into the living room. Jasper followed. He did not look at Heather. Heather looked up at him. He did not meet her eye. Tessa said, "I have reviewed the void notice from Terrastone and a confirmation of the case file from compliance. I need to confirm one thing in person on the record." She turned to me. Tessa said, "Do you confirm, as the broker of record listed on the now voided policy, that you did not authorize or sign the broker delegation form for this event?" I said, "I confirm." Tessa nodded. Ben stepped into the living room from the hallway. He was carrying my framed CPCU certificate. He had taken it off my office wall while I was on the phone with my mother. He set it on the coffee table next to the paperweight. Myra Lillian Endicott, Chartered Property Casualty Underwriter. License PA-CPCU-188642. Issued October 14, 2018. Cole, in the doorway, was looking at the certificate. I realized he had never actually seen it in person. He had been told about it. He had not seen it. Tessa turned to Heather. Tessa said, "Miss Endicott, please look at the license number on that certificate. Then look at the number on the broker delegation form I have in my purse." Tessa Whitfield is the kind of woman who walks into a room with the document already in her bag. She took a printout out of a slim black leather portfolio. She unfolded it. She laid it on the coffee table, on top of my framed certificate. Page 3 of the broker delegation form. File reference TS-NE-2024-1144. Signature page. The license numbers matched. PA-CPCU-188642. Letter for letter. Digit for digit. The signature on the printout was 84% of my signature. 26 other people in this room could not have told the difference at a glance. Tessa Whitfield was not one of them. Neither was Hugo's autoflag system. Heather started sobbing. My mother said, "Tessa, please. She is our daughter." She did not know what she was doing. Tessa said flat, "Mrs. Endicott, my son's family business carries 17 commercial liability lines through Terrastone. I personally signed 3 of them last quarter. I will say this slowly. The CPCU credential is not a family asset." She turned to Jasper. Jasper had not spoken since he walked into the house. He stepped forward. He looked at Heather. He spoke quietly. He said, "Heather, did you sign her name?" Heather threw her hands. I just used her number. I did not think." Jasper said, "Did you sign her name?" Heather said, "Yes." Jasper stepped back. He looked at the certificate on the coffee table. He looked at his mother. He looked at me. He said nothing. Tessa said, "Thank you, Mrs. Endicott. We will need a few more minutes of your time. There are some things my son needs to hear from you directly. Not from your sister." I said, "All right." Cole shifted his weight in the doorway. Glenn looked at the floor. My mother stood up from the couch. She said, "Myra, Heather is sorry. Look at her. She is clearly sorry." Tessa, we will pay back every dollar of the deposit, every dollar of the damages. We will make this right. This is a family matter. We can resolve this without the regulators, without prosecution, without... I stood up. I did not raise my voice. I did not move quickly. I held the chamomile mug in my left hand, lukewarm by then, and I let my voice stay where it had been all afternoon. I said, "Mom." She stopped. I said, "You used my license number. That is not a family disagreement. That is a felony." 4 seconds of silence. The floor lamp hummed once. Cora's baby monitor was quiet. I said, "I filed with my carrier because that is what a credentialed underwriter is required to do when she discovers forgery of her professional documents. I did not choose to escalate this. I am required, by my designation and by Pennsylvania state regulation, to report. If I had not reported, I could lose my own credential for failure to act. I would have lost my career protecting hers." I said, "I am not destroying anyone. I am complying with my professional obligation. Heather did this. The system is responding to what Heather did. The system is doing exactly what it was built to do." I sat back down. I took a sip of chamomile. Glenn lifted his face out of his hands. He looked across the room at me. His mouth moved before any sound came out. He cleared his throat. He said, quiet, exact, audible to every single person in the room. I knew. My mother's head turned slowly toward Glenn. She said, "You knew what?" Glenn said, "I knew Heather had the license number. She showed me the broker delegation form 3 months ago in February at the kitchen table. She asked me if it looked right. I told her it was insurance fraud. I told her not to do it. I did not tell anyone else." My mother said, "You knew, and you let her." "Glenn," Glenn said. "Rosalind, I have known since February. You told her to do it." The room went still. Glenn said, "You sat at that kitchen table. You told her," these were your exact words, "find a way to get the discount. Myra owes us this much." "That is what you said. Heather asked you twice if you were sure. You said yes both times." My mother opened her mouth. She closed it. She opened it again. Cole stepped into the living room from the kitchen doorway. The first time in 15 years he had walked into the middle of a family argument. Cole said, "I was there too. February 11th. After dinner. I came back to drop off the snow shovel. I heard the whole conversation through the back porch door. I should have called Myra that night. I did not. I am saying it now, in front of everyone, because I should have said it then." Tessa Whitfield closed her portfolio. She put it back in her bag. She looked at Jasper. She said, "We will be going now. Jasper, give me your keys. I will drive." Jasper handed her the keys without speaking. Tessa nodded at me once. She walked to the front door. Jasper followed her. They left without saying goodbye to anyone else. The door closed behind them at 6:07 p.m. For a few seconds nobody spoke. Heather had stopped sobbing and was just breathing in short, shallow pulls. Glenn had not moved from the fireplace. Cole was standing exactly where he had walked in. My mother got up off the couch. She crossed the room toward me, slowly, the way a person crosses a room they have rehearsed. She said, "Myra," she said, "Daniel was so young when he died. You were so small. I never knew how to look at you without..." She did not finish the sentence. She had been not finishing that sentence for 36 years. I said, "Mom, I know. I have known since I was 9. She nodded. She wiped her cheek. For a half second I thought she might say the word sorry. I have spent 36 years waiting to see if she ever would. She did not. She steadied her shoulders. Her face hardened. She said, "But you are so much like him. So exact. So cold. You could not. Just for once." She said, "You always made events about you. Just this once. Let your sister have the spotlight. This was supposed to be her day, and you ended it. With a phone call." I said, "Mom." I said, I ended forgery with a phone call. That is what credentialed professionals do. I took out my phone. I opened the photograph I had taken at 3:07 of Trevor's clipboard, with Heather's handwriting visible. I read it aloud, slow and flat. I said, "She will not come in. Have her wait in her car if she insists. H.E. That is what your daughter wrote about me, in front of you, in front of 210 guests." I said, "Tell me which event this was about." My mother did not answer. I walked to the front door. I opened it. I said, "You four can leave my home now." Glenn went first. My mother followed without looking at me. Heather went next, still sobbing softly. Cole came last. At the threshold, he stopped. He said, "Myra, can I call you next week?" I said yes. The door closed at 6:14 p.m. For the next 16 days, the world did exactly what a regulatory system is built to do. Terrastone Risk Group voided the policy retroactive to its April 12th issue date. The Pennsylvania Insurance Department opened case 2026-PA-INV-447 on Monday morning. The National Association of Insurance Commissioners published the notice on the Tuesday bulletin. Heather was charged on April 22 under Pennsylvania Title 18, Section 4101. She had an attorney by Wednesday. By Friday, on her attorney's advice, she had self-disclosed and pleaded guilty to a reduced misdemeanor count. Her sentence, 18 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, $4,200 in restitution to Terrastone. She did not go to prison. Her name went into a state registry of credentialed document offenders that her future employers would, by law, have to be informed about. Mountain Laurel Hotel kept the deposit. The master contract had a forfeiture clause for breach, $24,500. The vendor cancellations, caterer, florist, photographer, added another $18,000. Total family loss, approximately $46,700. Glenn paid. He paid because the booking was in his name as primary contact, and because he could not allow his daughter to be sued individually by 3 different vendors. He liquidated a small retirement annuity to do it. Jasper Whitfield called off the engagement 6 days after the party. The ring went back through his attorney brother Wesley. Glenn took early retirement from Allegheny Mutual Adjustment Services. His firm could not retain an adjuster who had known, 3 months in advance, that his own household was committing insurance fraud and had said nothing. It was not officially a firing. He understood. He left. My mother lost her seat as treasurer of the Mount Pisgah Presbyterian Women's Council. Aunt Marjorie had spread the story to the church group before any of the facts had stabilized. The council voted Marjorie off her own membership committee 3 days later for the spreading. Cole called me on the Tuesday after. Twice the following week. By the 4th week, he came to dinner. Cora, 3, met him at the door in her pajamas. She studied him for 4 seconds and said, "Uncle Cole." He sat down on our kitchen floor and did not speak for almost a minute. Then he asked her what her favorite color was. Tessa Whitfield sent me a handwritten card on plain ivory stationery. The card said, in her small, precise handwriting, "Your father would have been proud. Patrick, your grandfather, was a Whitfield land client 30 years ago. We knew him. You are very much his." That was the whole card. I put it in the cedar drawer in my bedroom dresser. I sent my mother one email. It read, "Mom, I am not estranged from you. I am done explaining myself to you. If you want contact, it goes through Ben or my office assistant. If there is a medical emergency, Ben, that is the channel from now on. I love you. I am done." She has not replied. I do not expect her to. I used to think the people who shared my last name automatically knew the license number behind it, knew what I had traded years for, knew what was not borrowable. But the afternoon my sister forged the 4 digits I had waited 4 years to be granted, I learned that strangers sometimes read you more accurately than the people in your own house, and that credentials do not need to be defended. They only need to be noticed, set down on the table, and allowed to do the work the policy already wrote them to do. I took the framed certificate from the coffee table and hung it back on my office wall. I drove the brass paperweight home that night, and set it on the corner of Cora's bookshelf, under a photograph of her great-grandfather Patrick. Then I walked to the foyer. I picked up the coral RSVP card. I carried it to the kitchen fireplace and dropped it into the flames. It burned for 8 seconds. Then it was gone. That is my story. One forged signature. One paperweight on a 3-year-old's bookshelf. And one stepbrother who finally spoke. If this reminded you that your credentials belong to no one but you, share it with a sister who needs to hear it. Comment, subscribe. See you next.